They didn't toss rice when we walked out of the chapel. They tried to toss my name, my deed, and the keys to my farm like confetti. That's how it felt when Evan, my brand new son-in-law in a navy suit that cost more than my tractor, tapped the microphone at the reception in Milwaukee, September sun still on the glass, and said, "Let's do this properly. Sir." The keys. A velvet tray sat beside the gift envelopes with a little placard that actually read "Farm Keys," as if my life's work were a monogrammed bottle opener. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and tell us where you're listening. From the room made that soft gasp a crowd makes when it's rooting for a magic trick to work. Daria, my only child, froze mid-smile, bouquet trembling. Victor, Evan's father, leaned back in his chair like a contractor inspecting a late delivery. I kept one hand on the brass ring in my pocket, the familiar weight of the farmhouse key, pressing my palm. The band tried to slide into Sinatra and missed the note. Ice in the champagne bucket clicked against silver like a nervous tooth. Evan held up paper, his memorandum of understanding, folded into thirds to look official. "As agreed at dinner in May," he said. "Dad," he calls me that, when he wants something, is giving the farm as our wedding gift. He grinned like a realtor at closing. Phones came out. Somebody whispered, "It's so generous." It took everything I had not to laugh. I set my glass on the white linen and asked the only question that mattered. "Where's the escrow, Evan?" His smile twitched. He half-turned the paper as if a bank routing number might appear if he tilted it toward the chandeliers. "We discussed. We had dinner," I said. "We didn't have escrow." I could feel eyes on me like heat from the stage lights. My sister Marla, 2 tables back, didn't move, just watched with her nurse's triage stare. Daria's mascara glinted. Victor's jaw worked. Someone near the cake said, "Is this part of it?" Evan recovered, salesman smooth. "Let's not be crass, sir. It's sentimental. Keys after vows, as we said." He angled the mic so the room could hear the smile in his voice. The placard, "Farm Keys," looked hand-lettered in a way only a printer can manage. It made me angrier than the paper. "You're asking for a transfer of real property on a microphone," I said, "in front of people who don't know a deed from a centerpiece." A ripple of uncomfortable laughter. The florist's lilies, too many lilies for a city hotel, pushed a sweet, expensive smell. Later, I'd learned there was a rush invoice for $2,800 with my name on it, authorized by Daria. In that moment, all I saw was my daughter not meeting my eyes. Victor stood, voice low and gravelly. "Be a sport, old man. Cameras are rolling." "That's the problem," I said. "You think cameras are contracts." Evan stepped closer, his cufflinks catching the light. "We can do this the easy way or the hard way." "I'm a farmer," I said. "Everything I do is the hard way." I did not pull the keys from my pocket. I did not hold up the brass like a ribboned prize pig for his lender to see later on a screen. I squeezed them until the edges bit my skin, and I tasted metal in my mouth. Then I told the nearest server I wouldn't be staying for dessert. The band stumbled into "Fly Me to the Moon," as if the song itself were embarrassed. I walked past the gift table, past the velvet tray, past the camera phones chasing a story that wasn't theirs to film, and into the cooler September air. The city lights glared across the valet lane, sharp as a welder's arc. In my truck, I set the keys on the bench seat and watched them glint. If they wanted a show, I'd give them paperwork instead. I turned the ignition toward Sauk County and started counting out loud what I needed to lock, what I needed to change, and what I needed to record. The farmhouse stove clock blinked 3:11 a.m. when I slid the brass keys onto the kitchen table and listened to the radiator whisper like it was keeping a secret for me. Milwaukee was 2 hours behind me, the reception lights still buzzing in the back of my eyes. Out here, the dark was honest. Monday, September 2nd, Labor Day. if that still meant anything to people who don't live for a living. I stood in my socks on the cold linoleum and let the silence tell me what the music had been too loud to say. I'd been turned into a stage prop at my own daughter's wedding. The kitchen smelled like old coffee and hay dust. I pulled out the yellow legal pad my late wife kept tucked in the drawer under the potholders, the one where she wrote in her looping hand back in 2011, "Keep the land." She'd circled it 3 times the week we refinanced, the same week Daria got her braces off. The ink had faded to a kind of tea color. I traced the circle with my thumb until my throat burned. In the junk drawer under the legal pad lay a glossy letter I'd buried under feed coupons and a broken tape measure. Ketter Ridge Development, offering $699,142 for immediate close. Their numbers printed bold, like a dare. A different kind of velvet tray. I'd tucked it away months ago, telling myself a man could look at a number without making it his god. In the blue light of the stove clock, the 6s and 9s looked like they were winking. I took the letter to the table, laid it next to the keys, and lined the edge with the legal pad like I was placing 3 cards. What they wanted, what I had, what I'd promised. The radiator clicked. A coyote stitched a thin yip across the north field. I felt something inside me open, the way a hydraulic line pops when a tractor's been pushed too hard. It wasn't anger yet. It was the empty that comes before it. I walked to the mudroom, so I wouldn't cry in the room where we ate. The smell back there is old leather and bleach. I pressed my forehead to the cold washer lid and let it come. Quiet, because the house remembers everything you do inside it. When I came back, the stove said 3:27 a.m. Nothing in the kitchen had changed, except I could breathe without tasting metal. By dawn, the pewter of the Sauk County sky had turned to a stubborn gray. I made coffee in the dented percolator and poured it into the chipped mug with the faded Packers G. The mail from Saturday sat where I'd dropped it, a trifold from the milk co-op, August pay stub, 60,114.22. I wrote the number in the margin of the legal pad right under "Keep the land." Enough to keep the lights on, enough to replace a bearing, not enough to fight men who think family is a word you say to speed a closing. My phone had charged in the truck. I brought it in with my jacket and set it face down on the table. The screen lit up with one message from Daria, time-stamped 12:14 a.m. "Dad, please don't make this worse. Worse than being asked on a microphone to hand your life to a boy who thinks escrow is a mood." I typed, "I love you, I won't be rushed on a microphone." I didn't send it. I deleted it, then typed "home safe" that I sent. The screen lit again, email this time. I let it sit. I wasn't ready to see Evan's name on my phone in my house. The first knock of the morning came from the wind on the pane. The second was the mail truck over the gravel. I heard Lorena's brakes and went to the box, bills, a farm supply flyer, and a white envelope from Bright Petals Florist, Milwaukee. Inside, a crisp invoice stamped Rush in lipstick red, $2,800. Hydrangea and Lily Premium Arrangements, 20. Authorized by Daria, bill to keep my name. There was a note scrawled in the corner. "Congratulations." I stared at it until the numbers stopped swimming. I hadn't ordered petals for a city ballroom that smelled like money pretending to be love. I slipped the invoice under the legal pad, then pulled it out again and underlined the total with my thumbnail until the paper dented. That's when the anger arrived. Not hot, but steady, like a pilot light catching. It didn't say, "Burn them," it said, "Be careful." It said, "Count." It said, "Paper beats microphone." The farmhouse still had the old metal file cabinet in the pantry, the one with a drawer that squealed like a fox. I slid it open and found what I always find because I put things back where they belong, the deed. Blue paper 2011 transfer, me and my wife's names, my name alone now. I set it next to the keys, next to the Ketter Ridge letter, next to the co-op stub and the florist bill. 4 corners of a map. I dialed Daria anyway. Twice, straight to voicemail. Honey, it's me. I won't talk in front of microphones. Call when you want to talk like family. I kept my voice steady. The third call I didn't make. Instead, I called my sister. Marla, you up? Nurses don't sleep, she said. You sounded like you were chewing rocks when you left the reception. They put my farm on a gift table, I said. They made a sign. She was quiet then. Coffee or thermoses? Thermoses, I said, and your stare. I might need it. She arrived with 2 stainless thermoses and a Tupperware of something that tasted like Sunday school potluck. She listened while I laid the 4 corners on the table. If they want to play paper, she said, you play paper better. Evan's father said permits in 2 weeks, I said. He said it like chewing nails. Then we get a man who knows which nails bend, she said. I called Laramie and Howe at 8:57 a.m. because men who count don't call at 9 when everyone else does. Tell Mr. Laramie I have a farm with a problem, I said to the receptionist, and a folder that thinks it can solve it. She laughed, the kind of laugh that says you're not the first farmer who's needed a rope at the edge of a dry. Well, she put me on for an appointment Wednesday, September 4th. Next call was the credit union in Plain. June answered, voice bright, like the Packers were winning. June, it's me. Has anybody opened escrow or tried to park funds with my parcel attached? She typed. No escrow, no pending deposits. Your August co-op check posted Friday. Do you need a confirmation letter? I do, I said. On letterhead, and I need it to say there's no escrow related to my acreage. We'll have it for you by noon, she said. Want pickup or email? Pickup, I said. Paper belongs in hands. The third call was to Gus, my neighbor, who knows fence lines the way priests know sorrow. You still got that trail cam? I asked. I got 2, he said. One faces the creek, one I can face your drive. Face the drive, I said. If anyone comes measuring what isn't theirs, I want a date and a face. On it, he said. I'll bring Pi, the dog. He believes in property rights. By 10, the kitchen table looked like a deposition had married a farm auction. I took photos of each document with my old iPhone, close-ups that caught dates, totals, the stamp on the deed, the bank routing. Not for the internet. For me. For memory that can't be argued with because it doesn't forget. The phone, finally, chirped. A text from Daria. I'm at brunch. Can we talk later? Please don't escalate. I stared at the sentence like it was written in a language that only looks like English. Don't escalate. As if men carrying yardsticks to my fence line weren't stairs themselves, I typed, I won't do microphones. Deleted it. Typed, I love you. I'm handling it. Sent that. She didn't write back. I pulled out the key ring and laid the brass in a line, house, barn, north shed padlock. I wrote each one on an index card and slid the card into a little plastic tag sleeve I'd picked up at the feed store in July, thinking I was just organizing. The organization felt like prayer. Under north shed, I wrote, spare with Gus. Under house, I wrote, change sept 10. I underlined it once. The sound of the pen on cardboard felt like a valve closing. At noon, I drove to the credit union. June printed me a balance confirmation, no escrow, 0 pending deposits, and stamped it with that satisfying, old-fashioned thunk, the kind of sound that means a thing is now more itself. I put the letter in a manila folder and wrote on the tab, bank, no escrow. On the way home, I stopped by the mailbox, and there, because the world has a sense of humor, sat a wedding thank you note already, postmarked Friday. Thank you for celebrating our start, it read in flourished ink. There was a printed photo tucked inside, me in the background at the reception, my hand in my pocket. If you squinted, it looked like I was reaching for a gift. Back at the kitchen table, I added the photo to the folder and clicked my pen. The radiator sighed. The house felt like it had put a hand on my shoulder. Grief is heavy, but it teaches you to lift right. I drew a small box on the legal pad and wrote inside it, Plan. Underneath, 3 lines, Laramie. Title search, letters, Liss pendants ready, sept 4 locks, change house, barn, tag keys, bag old hardware. Set 10 watch, trail cam, sheriff non-emergency, document every visit. I capped the pen and slid the keys back into my pocket because that's where they live. When you keep something safe long enough, your body learns the exact weight. The weight. In my pocket said, "You're not done." The legal pad said, "Start early." By supper, the sky over the west field had turned that stubborn September pewter again. I ate standing at the sink, then set out a plain envelope and wrote on it with a Sharpie, "If I'm in the hospital." Inside, I placed copies, deed, co-op stub, bank letter, florist invoice, the Ketter Ridge offer, and the photo from the thank you. I sealed it and wrote Marla's name on the front. A man doesn't plan for trouble. He admits it exists and puts its leash in a drawer. When the porch light clicked on, I stepped outside and breathed the smell of cut hay, diesel, and early fall. Somewhere far off, a pickup door slammed. I didn't flinch. Tomorrow, I'd walk into Laramie's office with my map of 4 corners. Tomorrow, I'd start trading microphones for filings. Tonight, I counted locks twice and left the keys on the nightstand. The metal was warm against the wood. The house settled. The day had finally told the truth about itself. I turned out the light and told the dark what I'd tell anyone who asked. I'm not giving them a show. I'm giving them paper. At Laramie and Howe's office on September 4th, the coffee smelled like burnt promises and printer toner. Mr. Laramie looked exactly like I hoped a small-town attorney would. Wire glasses, wool vest, no nonsense. He studied the copy of Evans' Memorandum of Understanding like it was a menu he didn't plan to order from. "Memorandums don't move dirt," he said. "Recorded deeds do." He drew 3 circles on his legal pad. Step 1, independent. Title search. Step 2, prep a Liss pendants. That's a notice to freeze the title if they try to touch it. Step 3, send formal letters of no consent. Paper fences, Mr. Wilson. We'll build them before they even realize you started. He talked like a tractor manual, steady, dry, precise. I liked him immediately. I pulled a $3,500 cashier's check from my wallet and slid it across the table. "I'm not here to fight," I said. "I'm here to protect." He nodded once. "Same thing, done correctly. We reviewed what I already had, the 2011 deed still in my name. The unsigned developer offer for $699,142 milk co-op statements, showing steady production income, and the florist's $2,800 bill I never authorized." Then he asked, "What we're missing is proof of their intent to take without consideration. Texts, recordings, a brag, something that smells like coercion." "They brag plenty," I said. "I just need to catch it." He grinned. "Let them talk." Outside, the air in Madison smelled like wet concrete and tailpipes. I called Gus from the truck. "You still got that trail cam facing the creek?" "Yeah, swing it toward my driveway. If anyone shows up measuring again, I want eyes on." "You got it," he said. "I'll bark them off before the lens does." That evening I scrolled through my messages. Buried between co-op receipts and spam was a thread from May. Evan writing, "After vows, keys are symbolic, right? Daria said you agreed." I remembered replying, "Symbolic doesn't mean legal." I took a screenshot and sent it to Laramie. With the note, Exhibit A, microphone rehearsal. The next morning, September 5th, I got a call from Victor. He said he wanted to clear the air and suggested lunch halfway. Madison Diner, Friday. I told him I'd come. Then I opened the voice memo app on my phone and renamed a blank file Feed Inventory. Friday, September 6th, the diner was packed with men in orange vests and farmers in hats that said things like "soil is life." Victor sat at a booth in the back, silver watch flashing under the fluorescent light. He didn't waste time. "We're trying to streamline the process. I've got guys at the county who can fast-track the permit. 2 weeks tops. You'll hardly notice a thing. Maybe shift your fence for access." "Permits," I said, stirring my coffee. For the subdivision, Ketter Ridge doesn't wait around. I let him talk. He bragged about a solid first quarter, quick approvals, no red tape when you've got the right hand shaking. Every sentence was a nail in his own coffin. The voice memo ticked quietly from inside my jacket pocket. When the waitress set down pie, he said, "You're doing the right thing for the kids. They'll be set." I looked him dead in the eye. Set to inherit dirt or debt? He blinked. "You always were sentimental." "Sentimental's what keeps graves marked," I said. He paid for the pie, called me partner, and left a business card on the table, one with the Ketter Ridge logo embossed in silver. I slipped it into my folder beside the florist invoice. That night, my phone buzzed with a new voicemail, unknown number. "Evan," the voice said, rushed. "We still need the owner's signature. The lender won't release until it's recorded. Call me before Friday." Then a click, no goodbye. Saved it, named it missing signature, and forwarded the audio to Laramie. He replied 10 minutes later, "That's coercion in stereo. Keep it safe." Saturday morning, September 7th, I texted Daria, "I love you. I'm protecting what Mum asked me to." 3 dots appeared, blinked, disappeared, then nothing, so I turned back to the work I could control. I made photocopies of every document I had, deed, letters, invoices, and slipped them into a binder marked Farm Evidence. I logged each page on a sheet taped to the inside cover, date, description, and where the original was stored. It looked clinical, but that's how you fight people who weaponize charm. You out-organize them. Sunday, September 8th, the sky over Sauk County was the color of skim milk. Gus stopped by with fresh batteries for the trail cam. "Got your driveway covered," he said, showing me a test image, my mailbox, clean and scented. "Pies in half the shots, though." "Good," I said. "He'll keep 'em honest." When he left, I replayed Victor's diner recording. His voice was smug, but the part that mattered came halfway through when he said, "Once the vows are done, he'll hand over the keys. He knows what's good for him." I paused it right there. He knows what's good for him. That was the tone you use when you're not talking to family, you're talking to property. I transferred the audio to a flash drive and labeled it with masking tape. V96, fence move. Then I wrote the date in the ledger taped to the cabinet. By dusk, I had my plan lined up like rows of seed. Legal, letters drafted, title search underway, Ellis pendants in queue, locks, change scheduled for September 10th. Proof, voice memo complete, voicemail archived, screenshots saved. I sat at the table, dinner untouched, and looked at the 4 items spread out before me. The deed, the Ketter Ridge offer, the florist invoice, and the co-op stub. Every piece of paper was a story in its own language. Together, they spelled one word: boundary. Before bed, I drove the half-mile down to the north shed. The padlock gleamed under the floodlight. I touched it once, cold, steady, and whispered, "Not yet." Then I went inside, poured 1 shot of rye, and raised it to my wife's picture on the mantel. "They think this land's dirt," I said quietly. "They'll learn it's stone." When the radiator hissed awake again, it sounded almost like applause. September 10th, a Tuesday. The sky over Sauk County hung low and clean, the kind of gray that makes everything look freshly scrubbed. I stood on my porch as the locksmith's van turned up the gravel drive, the tires humming like distant bees. The man's name was Rick. He had forearms like fence posts and hands that treated brass like scripture. "You replacing or rekeying?" he asked, pulling a heavy case from the van. "Replacing," I said. "Every lock that opens something I paid for." We started with the farmhouse. The door hinges groaned like they'd been keeping secrets for years. The smell of oil and sawdust filled the hall. Each deadbolt clicked home with a satisfying, deliberate sound, like punctuation on a sentence that had waited too long to be written. I catalogued every key: house, barn, north shed, each tagged with a plastic sleeve and a handwritten note. "Gus, stood nearby with his camera, documenting every swap, each old lock laid out on the porch rail in a neat row. I slid them into a plastic bag, dated and sealed. "Chain of custody," Gus joked. "Exactly," I said. When Rick finished, I handed him cash and asked him to sign a receipt. "For my records," I said. He nodded, wiped his hands on his jeans, and left without small talk, the kind of man who knows when something's bigger than locks. By noon, the house felt different. The air seemed clearer, ownership restored by the sound of tumblers aligning. I made lunch, just eggs and coffee, but it tasted like authority. That afternoon, I drove into town and mailed 3 certified letters. Each was printed on heavy paper and sealed with blue ink. To Evan Porter. Subject: notice of no consent to transfer or access. Demand to cease misrepresentation. The others went to Victor and Keta Ridge Development. I handed them to the postal clerk one by one, watched each envelope get stamped, and took photos of the receipts. Paper-proof, time-stamped. At the credit union, June greeted me with her usual grin. "You're back already?" she asked. "Want to double-check something?" I said. "Any escrow tied to my parcel?" She typed, fast and firm. "Nope, 0. Deposits, 0 pending transfers. Could I get that on letterhead again?" "Of course." She printed it, slid it across the counter. The letter read, "To whom it may concern. As of September 10th, 2025, no escrow accounts, deposits or financial holds exist related to the property under client Robert Wilson, parcel ID -2147-9. I folded it twice, placed it in the folder labeled Bank, no escrow, and thanked her. "You're saving me from people who think microphones are legal tender," I said. She laughed, not quite understanding. On the drive back, I stopped at the edge of the south field. Corn stalks rustled in rows like soldiers waiting for orders. I pulled out my phone, took a picture, and added a note. "Still mine." When I reached the farmhouse, a bouquet sat on the porch rail, wrapped in white tissue and tied with a ribbon. The card read, "Dad, please return florist call." I set my phone to record before dialing the number printed on the invoice. "Bright petals, this is Diane." "Hi, Diane, this is Robert Wilson. I got an invoice for $2,800. Can you tell me who authorized that?" "Let me check." The pause stretched. "It says Daria Porter, rush order, lilies and hydrangeas, but the card was signed in your name." "So my daughter ordered it, but billed it to me?" "Yes, sir." I thanked her, ended the call, and labeled the recording Florist Verification, 910. I sent it to Laramie with the note, "Pattern of assumption confirmed." His reply came minutes later. "Perfect. Keep receipts intact. We're nearly there." As the sun slid down, I gathered everything: deed, letters, invoices, photos, voice memos, and laid them on the kitchen table in rows. Each paper carried weight. A signature here, a time-stamp there. Proof that every accusation they'd make could be turned back by the facts they'd left behind. At 6:30, Marla stopped by with chili and the kind of look that cuts through pride. "You look like you're waiting for court," she said. "I'm waiting for sense to return to my daughter," I answered. "Then you'll be waiting longer than court takes." She sat, looked at the stack of papers. "What's this one?" "Envelope." "For you," I said, sliding it over, written across the front, "If I'm in the hospital." She raised an eyebrow. "Dramatic." "Documentary," I corrected. "Everything in there tells the truth if I can't." She nodded. "Good. People like them always assume you'll run out of breath before they run out of lies." We ate quietly. Outside, crickets started their night work. When she left, I walked her to the truck and watched the taillights disappear. Then I turned back to the porch, where the new lock shone under the bulb. Inside, I poured myself a beer and took a photo of the keys next. To my coffee mug, I emailed it to myself with the subject line, "Current ownership, verified 910. That night, I slept light, but steady. Every creak of the floorboards felt like the house exhaling relief. At 2 a.m., a truck rumbled past on the county road. Then, slowed near my gate. The trail cam caught it, headlights sweeping across the mailbox, then gone. I checked the timestamp, 2:17, proof, if proof were ever needed, that someone was still circling. Before dawn, I went outside barefoot, felt the chill of dew on the wood porch and turned the deadbolt once, slow and sure. That click, that small, solid click, was the sound of revenge beginning. By morning, everything that opened closed only for me. The locks had changed, but so had I. September 12th, Thursday morning. The coffee percolator hissed like a warning sign. When I opened my inbox, the subject line that glared back at me might as well have been written in all caps. Final reminder. Transfer of keys. Evan's email. The message opened with the kind of smarmy courtesy only men who've never broken a sweat can master. Dear Robert, as discussed at dinner on May 18th, keys will be transferred upon marriage, per our mutual understanding. Please, finalize this to avoid legal delay or reputational confusion. Regards, Evan Porter. There was an attachment, his memorandum typed on his realty letterhead, complete with a blank signature line, waiting for me to bless his fantasy. He CC'd Daria and his father, Victor. My hand tightened around the mug until the ceramic creaked. Reputational confusion, I muttered, reading the line again. That's what he called stealing a man's land in public. I forwarded the email to Laramie. Within an hour he replied, short and surgical response attached. Keep it factual. No emotion. His draft was 4 sentences of pure scalpel. Provide executed consideration and escrow routing details for the alleged transfer. Absent proof of payment, your assertion constitutes misrepresentation. Cease and desist pending counsel review. We sent it at 11:14 a.m. sharp. By dusk, silence. That kind of silence isn't peace, it's planning. The next afternoon, September 13th, Gus called from his porch. Bob, you might want to see this. 2 men were standing at my east fence line, one in a neon surveyor's vest, the other tall and broad-shouldered. Victor. They were holding yardsticks, pointing toward the north shed. I walked out slow, hands in my jacket pockets. You boys lost? Victor smiled, all gums and arrogance, just checking the boundary for Evan's site prep. Site prep for what? For progress, he said. You wouldn't understand. I understand trespass, I said, and I understand cameras. He glanced toward the trail cam mounted on the pole. Gus had positioned it perfectly, catching both their faces. You really think a county clerk will stop this? Victor asked. I don't need to stop it, I said. I just need to record it. He laughed. Keep playing lawyer, old man. We'll have the permits before you finish your coffee. I smiled back. I drink slow. He left, his boots kicking. Gravel-like punctuation marks. That night, I filed a brief incident report with the sheriff's non-emergency line. Trespass warning. Possible survey attempt without authorization. I didn't want drama. I wanted paper. The dispatcher's voice was calm. We'll send a cruiser to do a courtesy drive-by, she said. Around 10:15, headlights rolled past, slow blue lights flashing just once. I stood at the window, watching them reflect off my gate. The message was clear. They knew I wasn't bluffing. On Sunday, September 15th, I checked my co-op account online. My August milk check had cleared, 6,014 tals 22s, steady as always. I moved $2,000 straight to the legal fund. Laramie earned every cent of it. Around noon, my phone buzzed. Daria, finally. Dad, why are you doing this? Because he is, I typed back. Because you married someone who thinks microphones are contracts. He's trying to build a future for us. Then he should build it with his own land. No response for 5 minutes. Then just one emoji. A broken heart. I stared at it until the phone dimmed. You'd think heartbreak would still sting. After all these years. But it didn't. It just settled in, like an old ache before rain. 2 days later, September 17th, I found a business card tucked under my windshield wiper at the feed store. Ketter Ridge Development. The back read, "When you're ready to move forward." I took a photo with that morning's Sauk County Times front page in the frame. Proof of date. I filed the card under Evidence Unsolicited. That evening, I walked the fence line again. Crickets sang, the barn light hummed. Light. Somewhere in the dark, a truck idled, then turned away. My trail cam blinked red. Inside, I poured a bourbon and called Laramie. "They're circling again." He sighed through the line. "Time to stop them from landing. We'll file the LS. Pendants tomorrow. You've got enough now. Email, trespass photos, voicemail, florist call, bank slip. It's airtight." "Will it hold?" I asked. "It'll hold like winter frost," he said. "Once recorded, no bank or developer will touch that parcel." I stared at the folder spread across my table, every page marked, every corner labeled. I'd started the month with humiliation and ended it with ammunition. "Let's do it," I said. "Bring everything in by 9, he replied. "Courthouse opens at 10. That night, I cleaned my boots, pressed my one good flannel, and tucked the brass keys into my pocket. The metal felt different now, heavier, but earned. Outside, the wind carried the faint smell of silage and early frost. I could almost hear my wife's voice, the same one that used to whisper, "Keep the land." "I am," I said to the dark. Tomorrow wasn't a confrontation anymore. It was a filing, and for men like Evan and Victor, paperwork is the one thing they can't charm their way past. The war had started with microphones and applause. It was going to end with a stamp and a clerk's hand. September 19th, Friday morning. The courthouse in Baraboo smelled like coffee and polished tile, that faint waxy scent of government and patience. I arrived early, folder in hand, boots brushed, shirt tucked. Laramie was already at the counter, leaning on his cane like it was part of his argument. He looked up. "You ready to plant your flag, Bob?" "As ready as the dirt itself," I said. We stepped to the clerk's desk, a tall woman named Judith, who had the kind of face that doesn't flinch at family feuds. Laramie slid our folder across. Affidavit, title report, letters, the drafted lis pendens. He spoke with the slow rhythm of someone building a fence post by post. Judith scanned the parcel number and frowned slightly. She said. "Looks like someone already tried to record something on this property. A memorandum of understanding, unsigned by owner. Didn't meet notarization, so we marked it deficient, unrecordable." Laramie looked at me, eyebrows raised. "Well," he said softly, "looks like your son-in-law's already written our opening paragraph." I felt my jaw tighten. "So he tried to file my land before the wedding confetti was even swept up?" Judith nodded. "Timestamp says September 3rd, 2 days after. Let's put the real document on top of his fantasy," Laramie said. He handed her the lease pendants. It was only a page and a half long, plain text. No drama. Just a statement that ownership was disputed, and no sale, lien, or transfer could proceed pending resolution. A legal scarecrow. Banks see one and fly the other way. Judith stamped it. Clerk. Filed 09-1925, 10:22 a.m., and slid the receipt across. I swear that sound of the rubber stamp hitting paper was the cleanest sound I'd heard since the wedding band's Broken Sinatra. On the courthouse steps, Laramie squinted into the light. "They'll know by Monday. Title offices sink every 48 hours. By Tuesday, the whole state'll see that parcel as radioactive." "That's what we wanted," I said. He grinned. "Revenge by public record." We stopped for lunch at a diner near the river. I ordered meatloaf. He had soup. Halfway through, my phone buzzed. "Unknown number," I answered. "Robert Wilson?" "Who's asking?" "Victor Porter. Listen, friend, we've had a misunderstanding." "Not your friend," I said. "Fine, a misunderstanding. This memo thing got ahead of itself. Lawyers, clerks, it's all clerical. We just need to keep this in the family." "In the family?" I said. You mean like when you measured my fence line? Silence, then a syrupy chuckle. You've got quite the memory. Look, we've got investors ready to go. Quarter closes end of the month. Let's not get stubborn. There it was, the tell. Quarter closes September 30th, I said. That's what this is about, not family, profit, he sighed. Everybody profits if we keep this friendly. Not this time, I said, and hung up. Laramie was watching me over his coffee. That call go how you wanted? Better, I said. He just confirmed intent. By Saturday, the dominoes began to fall. June at the credit union left a voicemail. Hey, Bob, you'll get a kick out of this. Someone from Ketter Ridge called, asking about a product where they could pledge future rights to your land as collateral. I told them no such thing. Exists. Figured you'd want to know. I played it twice, smiling, saved it under the name Fantasy Loan. That evening, I sat at the kitchen table with my usual lineup: deed, florist invoice, co-op stubs, bank slip, now joined by the fresh clerk's receipt. Outside, the sun dropped behind the barn, light spilling through the window like honey. I pulled out a new document from the folder. Gus's photo of Evan at the reception holding the velvet tray marked farm keys. You could see the word keys sharp as a verdict. My empty hand blurred behind him, proof in pixels that I had not handed them over. Next to it, Gus had another photo, Evan showing his phone to a caterer, a screenshot of a transaction. Laramie had traced it to the catering invoice, $14,680, paid by Evan, likely from a developer's advance. That's where his money went, Laramie had said earlier, to flowers and cake, not escrow. I looked at the photo until it stopped being funny. Then I wrote a note for court. They bought a wedding with money meant for my land. That was the story in one line. Later that night, as rain began to tap against the window, my phone rang again. Victor. This time, I let it go to voicemail. Bob, think about Daria, huh? You don't want her embarrassed in front of everyone. These filings, they're public. Newspapers pull these. Don't drag her name through mud she didn't earn. He thought guilt might work where greed had failed. I saved the voicemail, too. Before. But I sent everything, photos, voicemail, receipts, to Laramie with a short note. Evidence package complete. Prep for hearing. His reply came 5 minutes later. Done. Court date, October 3rd. Bring your boots and your patience. I closed the email, shut the folder, and looked around the quiet farmhouse. Every creak, every nail felt steadier now. They'd tried to humiliate me with applause. I'd answered with paper, and in 10 days, that paper was going to talk louder than any microphone ever could. The wind rattled the new lock once. Testing it, then gave up. Tomorrow the land would wake up knowing it was finally protected, not by luck, but by law. October 3rd, Friday morning. The courthouse smelled like rain-soaked coats and old wood polish, the way justice always smells in towns that still know everyone's name. Branch 2, 9:10 a.m. I sat at the long oak table beside Laramie, the folder of truth open in front of me like a Bible. Across the aisle, Evan looked every bit the poster boy he imagined himself to be. Navy suit, perfect hair, smirk calibrated for sympathy. Victor sat behind him, jaw like a cinder block, arms crossed. My daughter, Daria, wore a winter white coat even though it was too early for winter. She didn't look up. The bailiff called the case. Porter vs. Wilson. The name cracked the air like a shovel striking stone. Judge Hart adjusted his glasses. A man built for fairness, not theatre. Mr. Porter, he said, glancing toward Evan's attorney, your petition claims a promissory gift of real property. Do you wish to proceed? Evan's lawyer stood. Slick suit, slicker tongue. Yes, Your Honor. We intend to prove that Mr. Wilson made an oral promise to gift his farm as a wedding present, that the couple relied on this promise, and that the refusal to deliver constitutes detrimental reliance. He clicked a tablet awake, the kind with a glare like a threat. With the court's permission, a brief video exhibit. The screen lit up. There I was, standing at the reception, glass in hand, Evan holding a microphone. "Let's do this properly. Sir, the keys." The crowd laughed, clapped. You could see the velvet tray marked farm keys. He froze the frame on my face, expressionless, pocketed hand. "Your Honor," the lawyer said. This was the moment of agreement. Witnessed by over 100 people, the defendant did not object. Judge Hart leaned forward. He also didn't speak. "Silence isn't consent," the lawyer smirked. "He also didn't deny it until after the ceremony." Laramie rose like an oak. "Permission to address, Your Honor?" "Granted." He laid 4 documents on the table, one by one, like playing cards that win the hand before the opponent knows the game's over. "1," he said, tapping the top page. "The original 2011 deed, sole owner Robert Wilson. 2, a bank letter confirming no escrow or deposits tied to this parcel as of September 10th. 3, a florist invoice authorized by the plaintiff's spouse in the defendant's name, showing a pattern of assumption, not agreement. And 4, he paused for effect, the county clerk's record of an unrecordable memorandum of understanding filed by Mr. Porter 2 days after the wedding. He handed the last sheet to the clerk. The seal gleamed under the fluorescent lights. Judge Hart adjusted his glasses again. "Filed without the owner's signature?" "Yes, Your Honor," Laramie said, "and without notarization. In fact, if you check page 2, you'll see the parcel number and a hand-drawn sketch of property lines, done, apparently, from memory." A small ripple of laughter ran through the back row. Evan shifted in his seat. The judge looked unimpressed. "That's not how land changes hands in Sauk County," Evan's lawyer tried to pivot. "But, Your Honor, we also have statements from guests who heard Mr. Wilson refer to the land as the kid's future." Laramie didn't even stand this time. "Future, yes. Possession, no." He reached into the folder again, pulled out a small flash drive, and handed it to the bailiff. "Defense Exhibit B, audio recording diner on September 6th. The courtroom speakers crackled to life. Victor's voice unmistakable. "We'll have the permits in 2 weeks. If we need to move your fence, we will." Then me, calm as a lake before a storm. "You're talking about my fence, my land," a beat. Then Victor again. "He knows what's good for him." When the clip ended, even the clerk exhaled. "Your Honor," Laramie said, "that's not a family discussion. That's coercion." The judge looked toward Evan, whose color had gone from smug tan to chalk. "Mr. Porter, did you or your father attempt to record a memorandum claiming ownership of Mr. Wilson's property?" Evan hesitated, just long enough for the truth to fill the silence. "It was a misunderstanding, was it?" Hart said. "Because misunderstandings don't usually come with parcel numbers and quarter-end deadlines." He shuffled the papers, reading quietly for what felt like an hour, but couldn't have been more than 2 minutes. Finally he spoke. "This court finds no evidence of a valid contract, written or oral. There is no consideration, no escrow, and no transfer of title." The court further notes an attempted filing of an unrecordable memorandum, which I will kindly describe as overzealous. "The Ellis pendants filed by Mr. Wilson will remain in effect pending any viable civil claim, which I suspect does not exist." He turned his eyes toward Victor. "And let me be clear, any further entry, surveying, or misrepresentation of ownership will result in sanctions, family or not." Laramie gave me a small nod, the kind that says, "We did it right." But Judge Hart wasn't done. He looked past Evan to Daria. "Mrs. Porter, I know this isn't where you wanted to spend your Friday morning, but let me give you something your husband may have forgotten. Family doesn't get to take what family never gave." Daria's chin trembled, just slightly. "Case dismissed," he said, gavel striking once. The sound echoed down the paneled hall like a shot that ends a long hunt. Outside, the rain had stopped. The air smelled like wet leaves and relief. As we stepped onto the courthouse steps, 2 local reporters stood waiting, notebooks ready. I shot Laramie a look. "Small towns," he said. Nothing stays secret after a filing. Evan walked by, jaw tight. "You ruined our quarter," he hissed. I slipped my hands in my pockets, the brass keys warm against my palm. "No, son," I said. "I saved my life." Victor followed, muttering about lawyers and loopholes. Daria trailed behind, eyes red, bouquet of wet tissues in her hand. She didn't speak, but she paused just long enough for her fingers to brush my sleeve. A single whisper. "I'm sorry." "Me too," I said and meant it. By the time I reached my truck, the courthouse steps were already slick again with drizzle. Laramie clapped my shoulder. "The law doesn't give applause," he said, "but it gives you paper. Paper lasts longer." We climbed into our separate vehicles. I sat for a minute before turning the key, watching the courthouse fade in the rearview mirror. It looked small from a distance, but that little building had just turned humiliation into history. When I pulled into my driveway later that afternoon, the trail cam blinked once in recognition. My property, my locks, my peace. The farm didn't look any different, but I did. For the first time since that damn microphone, I didn't feel like a guest in my own life. And as the wind rolled through the fields carrying the scent of rain and cut corn, I realized revenge doesn't have to roar. Sometimes it just signs, stamps, and walks quietly back home. By Monday morning, October 6th, the aftershocks began to hum through the county like gossip over barbed wire. Laramie called before sunrise, his voice rough with coffee. "They pulled out," he said simply. "Ketter Ridge?" "Yep." Development team emailed the clerk's office, citing an encumbrance on title. "That Ellis Pendens you filed is doing its job, scaring bankers faster than a bad credit score." I sat at the kitchen table, the brass keys laid out in a row, and smiled for the first time in weeks. The war had ended not with shouting, but with a quiet paper shield that even greed couldn't punch through. An hour later, my phone buzzed with a text from Daria. "I need time." I stared at it a long while before answering. "So do roots." She didn't reply, but the 3 dots appeared for a moment before vanishing, like she was thinking, maybe for the first time, about what had really been buried and what could still grow. Around 10, Marla arrived, balancing 2 mugs and a clipping from the Capital Times. Front page of the local section, "Judge rejects wedding day gift claim, property to remain with owner." Underneath, a grainy photo of the courthouse. Steps. You could barely make out my back as I walked away, folder in hand. "Congratulations, counselor," she said, handing me the paper. "I didn't win," I said. "I just refused to lose." "That's winning," she said, sipping. "Later, that afternoon," Laramie called again. "Sent a courtesy letter to the state bar," he said. "Not a complaint, just a note about opposing counsel's attempt to attach an unrecorded memo to your parcel. He'll think twice next time he lets a client draft their own property fiction. You're a subtle man, Laramie." He chuckled. "Subtle's what gets recorded." That night the house was quiet except for the hum of the fridge and the soft ping of the baseboard heater. I walked to the porch, where a new envelope sat in the mailbox. No stamp, just my name scrawled in Evan's handwriting. Inside was the original Memorandum of Understanding, corners bent, coffee ring across the signature line. He'd folded it so many times it looked like guilt. I held it under the porch light, then tucked it into the folder marked "Kept," the one where I stored things too heavy to throw away and too stupid to frame. The next morning, I called the florist. "It's Robert Wilson," I said. "You have an outstanding balance, $2,800, right?" "Yes, sir." "I'll pay $600, mark the rest forgiven, but change the note on your record, gift from father, not authorizer." There was a pause. "Of course, sir. I wasn't buying innocence. I was buying peace." That same afternoon, Gus came by with a grin and a thermos. "Trail cam caught Victor's truck Saturday night," he said. "Drove by slow, never stopped. Guess he wanted one last look." "Let him look," I said. "That's all he gets." We walked the fence line, two old men tracing boundaries made sacred not by law but by sweat. The corn was cut down to stalks now, the fields brown and brittle under the October sky. "You gonna sell?" Gus asked quietly. "Not to men who measure. Fence lines like spoils," I said. He nodded, and we stood there for a while, listening to the field breathe out the season. That evening, I cleaned up my desk, stacked the deeds, sealed the folder, labeled every envelope with black marker. On the last one, I wrote a single word: closed. Then I opened the old coffee tin where I keep mementos too stubborn to part with. Marla's nurse badge from when Mom died, my wife's garden gloves, a crumpled photo of Daria in kindergarten. I added the farm keys wedding placard, folded neatly, edges smoothed. Revenge had been about justice, but this part, this quiet, was about memory, the kind you can live with. Before bed, I took one last look through the window. The porch. Light caught the new padlock on the north shed, shiny, untested, perfectly still. Behind it hung the old one, rusted and dented, dangling from a nail. Both belonged here now, proof that some things can be replaced and others should just be remembered. The wind picked up, carrying the smell of silage and wood smoke. I thought about Evan, about Daria, about the men who treat other people's land like a line item. They'd come for soil and status. All they got was a filing and a lesson. Winter was coming. The land was safe. And for the first time in years, so was I. Justice doesn't announce itself with trumpets. It sneaks in on quiet mornings, carried by the smell of coffee and damp earth. October 15th, Tuesday. The courthouse papers had barely settled into their folders when I met with a woman from the land trust of Dane and Salk. Her name was Nora. Flannel. Shirt, clipboard, the kind of handshake that says she's seen a lifetime of weather. "You sure about this, Mr. Wilson?" she asked, spreading a map across my kitchen table. The green lines traced my creek, 20 acres running like a scar, of water and memory through the lower field. "I'm sure," I said. "Keep it out of developers' hands. Let it feed deer and roots, not egos." She smiled. "Then it's called a conservation easement. It'll stay green forever. Forever." That word felt like oxygen. We signed the paperwork at 10:22 a.m., same minute the lis pendens had been stamped 2 weeks earlier. I noticed that quietly. Patterns matter to me. When she left, I poured another cup of coffee and sat back at the table, reading the agreement. It wasn't revenge anymore. It was reclamation. The farm would survive me, unpaved and unbought. For that, I'd traded nothing but pride and ink. That afternoon, I stopped by the credit union to refinance my equipment loan. June grinned when she saw me. "You again, Mr. Wilson? You planning to buy the bank next?" "Just locking in a better rate," I said. 4.1% sound fair?" She printed the documents, slid them across. "Based on your co-op record, you're the most reliable farmer we've got." Funny, I thought, how quickly a man becomes reliable once his name stops sitting on someone else's wish list. By 3 o'clock, I'd closed the loan, picked up diesel, and was back home when my phone buzzed. "Daria, we're separating." "For now," she wrote. "No greeting, no punctuation. Just that. I didn't cheer, I didn't curse, I just stared at the words until the screen dimmed. Then I walked to the pantry, pulled out the wedding guest book I'd found in her things, and flipped to the page where someone had written farm keys in looping cursive. I circled it once in red pen and added a note. Not a gift. A lesson. That. Night, I left 2 baskets on her stoop, one filled with corn, the other with that guest book page. The note taped to the handle said, "This was never about you choosing him. It was about him choosing my land." I didn't ring the bell. The next morning, a text. "Thank you for the corn. I read your note." "Then you understand," I replied. "I do now. Maybe she did. Maybe she just wanted to. Either way, it was enough." Later that week, I drove to the county clerk's office one last time. The receptionist recognized me before I even reached the counter. "Mr. Wilson," she said, smiling, back again. "Just filing this," I said, handing her a certified copy of Judge Hart's order, clean and official. "Want it attached permanently to the parcel record." She took it, stamped it, filed 10/17/25, and handed me a duplicate for my records. I slid it into the same folder where this whole mess had started. When I stepped outside, the air had the first bite of frost. Across the street, the courthouse flag fluttered lazy in the wind. Back home, the farm was gold and brittle. Gus's cows grazed over the fence, and the Hernandezes, young couple from down the road, pulled up in a pickup to talk leases. They wanted the south field for rotational grazing. Offered fair rent, handshake terms, no drama. I said yes. Laramie drew up a one-page agreement that felt more honest than any wedding vow I'd seen that year. By sunset, the paperwork was signed. The farm was earning again. The land was free. The people who tried to own me were learning to live without me. I sat on the porch, wrapped in my jacket, watching dusk crawl over the fields. For once, justice didn't feel like thunder. It felt like the low hum of the milker, the shuffle of roots doing their quiet work underground. When the first star showed itself over the barn roof, I whispered, "You can rest now." And for the first time in months, I believed it. Late October. The mornings came slow, wrapped in fog that clung to the fence posts like memory. The fields were brown now, cornstalks snapped down to brittle ribs. The world had moved on from microphones and lawsuits, but my land, my quiet corner of Wisconsin, was finally breathing right again. One cold Thursday, I stopped at the Quick Trip in Baraboo for gas and a cup of coffee. There, by the community bulletin board, stood Victor Porter. No cigar this time, no booming voice, just a man in a heavy coat staring at the legal notices tacked under glass. He didn't see me at first. His eyes were locked on a clipping from the Capital Times, the one about the court ruling. When he finally turned, our gazes met. He gave me the smallest nod. Not apology, not defiance, just recognition. A quiet surrender. I nodded back, and that was the end of it. Outside, the wind carried the smell of diesel and fallen leaves. I sipped my coffee and thought about how some battles don't end with winners or losers, just the truth standing alone after the shouting stops. By the time I got home, the sun had burned off the fog. The porch was littered with leaves, the color of tarnished coins. I swept them aside and hung something new by the door, the original brass key to the farmhouse looped on a nail. It caught the light just right, gleaming like a medal. Marla stopped by that afternoon with pie. She saw the key and laughed. "Your Purple Heart?" she said. "Something like that," I told her. A reminder that some things you don't surrender. Twice we ate on the porch, steam rising from our mugs. The air smelled of wood smoke and frost. Out by the north shed, Gus's trail cam flashed once, motion detected. Later, when I checked the footage, it wasn't trespassers or trucks. Just deer nosing around where the survey flags used to flutter. I'd taken those flags down weeks ago, stuffed them in a coffee tin marked "The Attempt." Every so often I open it just to remind myself what greed looks like when it runs out of road. That evening, the local news ran a small segment about family land disputes and rural title rights. They didn't name us, but I recognized my own shadow in the footage. Old farmers closing gates, turning locks, saying nothing. I changed the channel. A few days later, I got a message from Daria. "Dad, can I come by Sunday? I've been helping at the Baraboo food pantry." I stared at the message for a while, then typed back, "Bring warm boots." Sunday came cold and blue. Frost rimmed the porch railings. Daria's little sedan crunched up the gravel, slower than I remembered her. Driving, she stepped out in a knitted hat, looking smaller, softer. "Hi, Dad." "Hi, kiddo." We walked the fence line together, the same one Victor and his surveyor had measured weeks before. The earth was firm beneath the frost. She kept her hands in her pockets, voice low. "I didn't know about the memo he filed. I swear I didn't. I believe you," I said. "I thought I had to pick a side." "You did," I said, looking at her, "just not his." Her eyes filled, but she didn't cry. She just nodded, slow, as if trying to make peace with time. At the gate she paused. "It's beautiful out here," she whispered. "I forgot how it smells in the fall." "Smells like truth," I said. We stood there a while longer before I said, "You're welcome here any time. Just don't bring paperwork." She laughed, a real one this time, and I felt the weight of the season lift a little. That night, after she left, I sat at the kitchen table, the brass key glinting in the lamp's glow. Outside, frost laced the window pane like lacework, and, somewhere out in the field, a lone owl called once before the silence folded back in. I realized something then. Revenge isn't fire, it's rebuilding the quiet after the burn. I finished my coffee, turned off the lamp, and whispered into the stillness, "You keep what you defend." The radiator hissed in answer, steady and content. A week later, with the frost setting in for good, I decided it was time to tell my story, not to newspapers, not to courts, but to the camera on my kitchen counter. I set my phone on top of the flour canister, angled it toward the table, and pressed record. The red dot blinked, waiting. "I guess this is for whoever thinks a microphone can take what a deed won't give," I began. My voice sounded older. Then I felt gravelly but certain. The farmhouse light caught the brass keys laid out beside me, the same ones Evan had demanded on a velvet tray. "They wanted a show," I said, "so I gave them the paperwork version, quieter, meaner, and permanent." I turned the camera slightly, letting it catch the corner of the deed, the judge's stamped order, the florist bill, and the bank. Slip marked 0 escrow. "They tried to spend a wedding video the way some men spend other people's pensions," I said. "All flash, no footing." I paused and looked around the kitchen, the chipped mug, the humming fridge, the faint rattle of wind in the vent. These were the sounds of real ownership, the kind that doesn't need witnesses. "You can't record a promise onto land," I said softly. "You can only earn it." The camera light blinked once as I stood and reached for the folder labeled Roots. Inside, I slipped a flash drive, the diner recording, the court order, the filings, the whole mess distilled into data. I sealed it with a strip of masking tape and wrote, "If she ever wants to understand." Then I looked straight into the lens. "Daria, if you're watching this someday, know this. You didn't lose me. You gave me away, and I found my way back." I let the silence breathe for a few seconds before ending the recording. No fade out, no music, just truth. The next morning, October 27th, I drove to the credit union with that same folder. June was at her desk, glasses perched on her nose. "Morning, Mr. Wilson," she said, smiling. "Morning. I need to open a custodial CD," I said. $5,000 under my daughter's name." She tapped at her keyboard. "Purpose of the account?" "For school," I said, then added, "not for men." June looked up, half amused, half confused. "Good answer." When she handed me the receipt, I folded it once and wrote across the bottom, "For a future that doesn't need permission." Driving home, I passed the old reception hall. The parking lot was full again. A new wedding, laughter spilling into the cold. From the road I could see the glow of string lights, couples, in tuxedos and heels spinning inside. The same song the band fumbled at Daria's wedding. Sinatra, this time on key. I slowed, but didn't stop. "Good luck to you," I murmured. "May your vows come with fine print." The road curved, taking me back toward the farm. The last of the leaves fell like burnt confetti over the hood of the truck. When I pulled into the drive, the sky had gone the color of pewter. The porch light flickered on automatically, catching the brass key hanging by the door. I went inside, set down my coat, and placed the camera on the table again. Not to film this time, just to keep it there. A silent witness to peace. Supper was simple. Bread, soup, and the quiet hum of the radiator. The house creaked the way old houses do when they're content. No strain, no secrets left. I picked up the brass keys, turned them in my hand until they warmed, and said it aloud, for no one but me to hear. You didn't lose my land. You lost the right to ask me for it. The words felt clean, final, earned. I set the keys back on the table, beside the folder marked Roots, and sat for a moment in the hush that follows a long war. Outside, the wind moved through the corn stubble, low and steady like breathing. Winter could come now. I was ready.